Aloha, everyone. Welcome back to the Body and Soul Wisdom Podcast. Today, I have a beautiful guest coming to us from Alberta, Canada, Janet Kendrick. She is the Prosperous Woman, is her business. She supports women to heal their relationship with money. Heal Your Money, Heal Your Life is the book that she has out. We're going to share more about that in the links to the show. And I'm just so happy to have you here with us today, Janet. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today as well.
We just before the show, we probably talked for at least 20 minutes, and I thought, oh my gosh, I just have to hit record because we have very similar stories, similar beliefs. We come to you with a conversation around the energy of money. We talk about, we both have an understanding of the energy body and the chakras, a feminine approach to receiving. We are both in a place of, in our lives, of stepping into more grace and ease and just really understanding that frequency of prosperity, which I'm excited to share with the listeners because I am passionate about this conversation as well, as we both are, and we both have different things to share, yet similar values and alignment in the way that we share our message. So would you be willing to just share a little bit about your life story and how you got to this place of realizing the alignment and the grace and the ease that allow us to live in a path of prosperity?
Yeah, for sure. You know what? My journey was not an easy one. And when I was in my 20s, I was a young mom. I had three daughters and I was struggling. I was, I struggled with depression and I wanted things to be different in my life, but I didn't know how to make it different. And I was in a therapist's office, like I had been so many times before. And she asked me what I wanted. And I said, I want to be happy. And she said, the key to happiness is to live your truth. And I knew in that moment, I'm like, that sounded easy, but I knew that it was going to be difficult. And I remembered that when I was like 5 years old, I prayed to God, dear God, like, please someday make me happy. And from that moment, I became open and willing. And things be things came into my life to begin that healing journey, things like yoga and horses and journaling. And I just listened to my intuition and to that guidance along the way. And it began to open me up to understand my experience that happened to me when I was growing up. In that understanding and looking at the people around me that hurt me in life's experiences that created my wounds, I was able to find some forgiveness. And with forgiveness, began to open my heart. And I was someone who seeked love outside of myself, right? Would someone please love me? And then I started to go inward, right, on that journey and to discover, what love really means, right? To go inside myself and to understand that love is kind, love is patient. Love don't hold us in a place of the past. So those were important things that I learned along the way. And as a young girl, first off, I was born to a mom who was 17. She placed me for adoption twice before the age of 1. So for the first 7 days, I spent alone in a hospital room. She didn't even name me. I was named by a nurse. And she did keep me. Her father said she could bring me home. 3 months later, because there was a lot of alcohol and violence in the home life, she was going to place me up for adoption again. She did keep me. My dad, at a young age, triggered a psychotic break when he took some LSD, which created schizophrenia and manic depressive in his life. So he was very violent and unstable in my life growing up. So I grew up in an unstable environment of lack, abuse, violence, addiction. And even though my family did keep me, they did not know how to express love easily, right? That didn't come easily. So that's why at the age of 25, and I was a young mom, I wanted things to be different for my children, right? That was really important to me. And being a mother, I think, sparked that change in me because I wanted to be better. I wanted to, be a better human for them.
Thank you for sharing all that. I mean, I think about what's coming through for me is, for the listeners, everyone has a story, and your story is different than mine, is different from other people's. And then I heard you say a couple of things. Number one, I just want to say I want to honor your story, and the part where I can also feel such great transformation has been part of my story is motherhood is a portal to a, if we allow it to be, it can be. And it doesn't mean that it's easy, because it is easier, I think, for some people to just be and do what they know. But at some point, everything is a choice. And so for you, I heard that motherhood was that spark of wanting to create change. And I know it was the same for me. And a couple of things that I heard you say that I know that listeners can resonate with, even though your story is maybe different in some ways, maybe not. A lot of us have experienced lack in some way or another, or maybe some, form of abuse in some way or another, but that's not the point of the story. Is really about how you overcame when you heard that therapist say the path to happiness is to live your truth. And then I heard you say you had to learn to go in and love yourself. So I feel like
Yeah,
that is really the root of the message and everything of your
absolutely.
story, of what you shared. And yet, why does this seem so hard? What is keeping, I'm going to talk specifically to women. That's who I serve, it's who my audience mostly is, or even for the listeners that are supporting women, this can help you better understand the partner, the woman that you're supporting. What is so hard about this, what we all know to be true, have you found, or what did you have to overcome? What did you have to put practices in place to help you get to the point where you were just willing to accept that your happiness and loving yourself was your choice? How did you make that switch? It doesn't sound like you had a lot of support in the beginning. It sounds like you had a reason because you were a mother. So still a little bit of an external reason, but not that you're also a part of that. How, because what really helped you to make that switch? And I also want to say I don't think it happened overnight. I know that it's been a journey. We talked before this, but what are some of the things that happened along the way or that were in place that allowed you to really make that choice? And I'm
Yeah,
guessing maybe now it's a daily choice and a practice that you
it
continue to
is.
do.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a daily practice. And it's a practice that I started back when I was 25. And being that mom who wanted that change, I was in an unhealthy relationship, right? Well, one, I was unhealthy within my own self. For the most part, I hated my life growing up as a child, right? In that place of struggle. I didn't like who I was. So I did have some inner work to do. And when yoga came into my life and I sat onto the mat, that allowed me to begin to get quiet and to listen to myself. To I didn't trust myself at that time in my life, so going inward. And another thing, I started to journal, and prayer was something that was always into my life. So when I would journal, I would pray, "Dear God," and I would go in and I would express all of my emotions. And I was always a deep feeler. And to be able to, that was a way of processing my emotions. What I didn't know over the years that I know now was really I was healing from a lot of trauma experiences, right? That created a lot of wounds. And what I know about trauma is that it can limit us. It can limit us within our mindset, within our body. We can make a lot of disempowered choices, which leads to disempowered actions, right? So for me, my thoughts were not healthy thoughts, right? I didn't like myself. Um, Therefore, my feelings, right? What I think about is how I feel. My feelings were in a lot of fear place. I was insecure. I didn't trust myself. There was a lot of lack in my life, right? I was seeking love. So I was not finding it with inside myself. And then the actions, right? I had habits and actions that were more self-destructive to me. So going inward, sitting on a yoga mat, getting still, getting comfortable in my skin and listening to whatever came up, journaling and processing my emotions. And it took about, I think, 10 years. So I was 35, so 25 approximately when I started. But at the age of 35, I was ready to leave my unhealthy marriage, right? I became happier within myself by doing the work. I also had horses come into my life as well. So yoga, journaling, horses, processing my emotions, it started to change me. I started to love who I was. When I started to forgive those that created hurt in my life, that opened my heart to think I am worthy of love, right? And so when I got enough courage to leave my unhealthy marriage and stepped off that path, then I entered into a new phase of my life, and some dreams of my life came true. In a dream marriage, I lived on a dream acreage, I had my horses. So it was like that next phase of my life. And those tools helped me to go inward and change my inner world, right? When I changed in my inner world, it was mirrored in my outer world. And I believe that, that's what we do. So those were some of the things. At the age of 35, right before I left my marriage, I started to teach yoga. So the universe, I was asked if I would teach it. And I thought, well, there's one thing to be a student and another thing to teach it. You probably might agree with this, but when you start teaching something, you really start to embody it. And when I started to teach, I really felt energy move through me. I felt spirit move through me. I thought, like, who is this teaching through me? So that was even a newer experience, but I opened myself up to receive that energy, that presence, right? And that also changed my life. So that's a little bit about the processes. And those are things that I practice every day still to this day, because it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking my language. It's, embodied leadership, I always say prosperity is embodied trust. That would be my definition. It says
Yeah.
something else in the dictionary, but my definition is embody trust, because when we embody trust, we do open to receive. It's vulnerable. It's vulnerable to open to receive because of our life experiences, because we've been hurt or let down or we failed or whatever the story is that we created. And so I really love that you bring this concept in of how important it is to embody and to be in your body, especially in, the spiritual circle, because I do feel like sometimes there is this, and I know in my own personal journey, this idea of, and when you spend a lot of time in meditation and prayer, you can go outside the body and into a higher state of consciousness. And it's really important to live that truth, like we started our conversation with. You have to embody it, live it in this dimension, in this time and space now. And because in my life I had an out of body experience, I know that I know that the only way that we're here to be is to be in the body. It's there actually isn't, in my experience, there wasn't sadness or joy outside of the body, which was really interesting to me. And so I love that you bring that in. And one thing I want to talk about that I think is so important, and I want to get into the energy of money too, and really of embodying prosperity. We before the call we talked a little bit about the difference between mindset and beliefs, and why, from my e- experience and what has seems to be true for me, is that when we're talking about this inner work and this inner world and creating this shift, sometimes we talked about how you had thoughts that created feelings that created actions, and that does happen. But there is a difference between your thoughts and the embodiment. There's a major energy shift. And so sometimes, for example, and of course, I love journaling. I've published 2 journal book hybrids. Journaling helped me to become aware of my thoughts, but that is only the first level in my experience. Positive affirmations are great, but they're really truly not enough, at least for me. And I know when I work with women, you have to get into the full body experience and embody the shift of, what you want in your life in the future to be possible. It's not just saying it to yourself, it's allowing it to settle in on a frequency level all the way down to your core, your root chakra. And that is where I experienced, that is when we can fully receive, when we fully shift that thought and the emotion to the action. Then it doesn't even become work anymore, because embodiment is just who you are. and
Mhm.
everything that starts to shift, and you start to live in a new frequency and a new like you literally live in a totally different reality. And it's really hard to, this is an interesting belief as I'm hearing myself say that, but it can be difficult to share that with people because they really have to experience it themselves. And
Yeah,
so when you talk about the embodiment, I want to shift into more prosperity a little bit, but we're shifting from the embodiment process and how you got to where you are. What is the embodiment of prosperity or the prosperous woman? What is that for you? Like, what does it feel like? What is the life experience of that woman? And would you be willing to share, both the shadow or the challenges of it and also the joys of it, of her?
yeah, absolutely. So you talked about trust, and that I'll start there because trust is, that part of being open to receive. And when I was in my life of living, my dream life at that time, my dream acreage, my horses, my husband that I loved with all my heart and soul, and it really provided a foundation for me to grow even more within myself. And I was happy in all areas of my life. And I remember sitting on my deck one day and I'm looking out at the property, and I was really grateful, but I was still not trusting in my life. And I thought, I prayed at that moment. I said, please help me to let go of everything that I need to let go of so that I can trust completely. Right. And trusting is trusting your intuition. When you hear that voice, no matter what it is asking you, is to follow it, to trust it, regardless of the amount of money in your bank account, regardless of the opinions of others, those types of things. So I didn't believe in myself. And my husband at the time used to say, if you don't believe in you, who will believe in you? So I thought, why don't I believe in myself? And I spent about a week, and I would, take nature walks, and I would reflect on that, which I think is really important, that self-reflection. And I thought, why don't I believe in myself? And when I went deeper, there was a deep rooted belief of I wasn't enough.
Mm.
Now, money mirrored that for me because I was happy in all areas of my life, but I was not happy in my money relationship. And when I looked at my money relationship, I was someone who strived to achieve higher financial goals, but it was never enough. I judged the balance of my success by the balance in my bank account, which was never enough. Even though I had no debt, I had a pension, I had savings, right? This was a story that I was telling myself. So to go deeper into clear that deep rooted belief that I was enough, because the truth is I was born enough, right? When I came into the world, I was born enough. I was born love. And then I had life's experiences that taught me otherwise, right? Which made me smaller, which made me feel like there was a lack, which made me feel like I was not loved, I was not enough. So I went deeper to clear that deeper rooted belief within myself. And changing that belief, of course, when I started to, so Prosperous Woman is about growing and expanding in alignment with the higher parts of yourself. That's becoming. And to become a higher version of yourself, you have to love all parts of yourself. And in working as a coach at that time, and I started to work with archetypes. So archetypes is the power, the pattern, the story that is within us. It also identifies, when it comes to sacred money archetypes, what our gifts are, what our strengths are, what our challenges are. And I love to call our challenges our shadow sides of self. So this is what we often do when we have expectations or things are not going our way, or we make a choice and we regret it, because regrets can teach us that we could have done better, right? So today, if I am enough and I make a choice based on that place of I am enough and a place of love, and even if I made a choice from a place of fear, from a place of insecurity, and I thought my experience is not working out for me, when actual fact, my experience is working out for me, the more I understood that I'm either in a place of love or a place of fear. And then I started to navigate through the energy of my emotions and understanding what that is. Our energy is our currency. Most of the time in the world, people are walking around disconnected, negative about their money relationship and how they use their energy. Maybe they're in a job that is sucking their soul and they're not doing the things that they love. When to come into alignment with the higher version of yourself is to use your energy in alignment, right? Because in alignment with what it is that you like to do, what brings you joy, what lights you up. It's going to feel better for you, right? You're going to think more positive. You're going to feel better. You're taking actions that is in alignment. And being in alignment is being in integrity. So what's integrity? Living our truth, right? So the truth is we're both love and fear. And in the world, we live in a world that really supports the fear, really supports the not enoughness. So to set yourself apart, to be different, you really have to practice being anchored and grounded in that I am enough. I believe I am worthy and deserving. So money helped me to go deeper. And when I realized that our emotions around money can teach us how free we really are, it was like, oh my gosh, right? It really blew my mind, because it really, what is money, right? It's an exchange, it's coin, it's paper, it's nothing without us. Yet we're so focused building our net worth, and we're disconnected from our enlightened net worth, right? So it's understanding that we are our greatest asset. How am I taking care of this asset? How am I supporting this asset mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially? I'll say that as a woman, and these were my desires in life, I wanted happiness, healthy relationships, and financial freedom. What woman doesn't want that, right? In my past, I gave too much of my responsibility to the men that were in my life. And I was in unhealthier relationships. Even my dream marriage, which was my dream marriage for 12 years, there was emotional disconnect on that part. But I didn't realize that, and in that relationship, I was able to connect emotionally with myself. So our relationships does mirror for us. So taking responsibility and accountability to become abundant is to change within your own internal world, and taking care of yourself, not giving too much responsibility over to someone else, right? Because there's a risk in that. So you want to balance that risk. So that was a lot. I'll pause right there.
Oh my gosh, I love it all. I feel like you are speaking words from like my heart and my mouth, and we say a lot of the same things and have a lot of the same beliefs. So I know the listeners are like, I can see why this she's on her show. I talk about 5-element wealth, WELLTH, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial. Those 5 pillars being the tree of prosperity. It's actually in my book. Because it is really important. We talked about embodiment. It is about, I think of where I live in Florida, we have springs that naturally just bubble up from the earth, like all the time, giving water, like life all the time, and they don't need anything. And they just, the earth just continues to give water and life, like from the springs, and they're beautiful. And that, it to me, is prosperity. And we were born into that. And I love, one of the things I just want to bring clarity around, because I really want the listeners to get this part, is that I feel from my experience personally, and also the women I've been coaching for 17 years. So this idea of not enoughness, we do live in a world that, especially with social media and just, I have 2 daughters, so it's like this, comparison and the whole thing. We have to be really mindful to stay in our own lane and really take care of those 5 elements of living well, beginning with the body, our well-being, our mental, emotional state. And when we do that, those actions do, they do express self-love. They do, there's energy in everything. Money is energy, food is energy, our emotion is energy. All of those things contribute to the frequency and the energy of what prosperity is. And as we do that, we develop that relationship. I feel like it helps us to develop that trust with ourselves. And when we do that, we talked about expectations being limiting, and trust is like that. I always think about that deeper, that really, 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 really deep layer of trust where I have experienced true prosperity, is when you cannot see. There is nothing that is going to show you that what you think is going to be true. Like it's that last percent. Like 99% of the things can show you, we get, confirmation that yes, this is in alignment. And then there's that little 1% that you're still willing to lean into the trust because you've gotten to that point where you just know that everything is working for you, even the things that are really hard. And you touched on that a little bit. I got to creating my prosperity course because of a failed business partnership with somebody who I thought was my best friend. It was like a total betrayal, and it was so hard to go through. It was like my version of a divorce almost, because I've been married 21 years. But that led me to realizing I was putting trust in other people and other things other than myself.
Yeah.
And that was a painful experience. And, I don't know, like my third or fourth rebirth, I would say, in this life. But however, it led me to learning to understanding that prosperity does come in trust. And so, what's important for the listeners to also understand is what I hear a lot of women say is that they know that they're enough. It's like they're at that point where they've done a lot of inner work. I love shadow work. I love archetypes. I've always done archetypes for that element of your gift versus your shadow. But what about the woman who is like, there's a shift that I want her to understand, and I'm wondering if you can help me navigate this. She knows here that she's enough, but she's still not completely willing to take the action that proves that she actually trusts enough. Because there's a difference between knowing you're enough and then taking that leap of faith.
Yeah.
When, so to the woman who's done a lot of work, she knows that she's enough. She's probably in her 40s or 50s. Like she's tired of doing the inner work. She's done it. She knows. And she's ready to take that next step. She wants to live, she wants to believe that there is somebody that will love her the way she wants to love. She wants to believe that she can create a thriving business. She wants to believe that she can thrive in health. But she's not quite, what does she need to actually take? Like, I know that she needs trust, but how does she get there
Yeah.
to take that leap of faith, that action into trust? Because I think there's a lot of women that have done the work that know their worth. But I know in my life what's been so different, and the reason it's worked out is because I've taken those leaps of faith. And I also know that indecision is a decision to stay where you are. And also it doesn't always work out, but when it does, it works out like amazing. So what would you say to that woman?
Yeah, absolutely. What's holding you back? For one thing, it's identifying what is holding you back and getting clear about what it is that you really want. So there's the, here I am and here. So I'll bring it into relationships, right? Because for most of my, I'm 50 years old, and for a large part of my life, I spent in unhealthy relationships, not whole relationships. And what I needed to understand was boundaries.
Ooh, that's a really good one with money, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about this. So here's money, and in our money relationship, we could be seeking the opinions of other people's. So that could hold us back. So they already feel like I'm enough. Here's my foundation, and here I am. So let's move up into the deserving. Am I worthy of a healthy relationship? Right? Move up into the solar plexus, which is our will, the divine's will, our self-esteem. There's a lot of things that have will over us. It could be debt. It could be money. It could be the opinions of others. It could be inside. I'm still seeking approval, right? I'm still seeking that instead of approving of myself. So I'm seeking it externally versus I feel it inside myself. In those moments where am I challenged to have money conversations, or am I challenged to have conversations in relationship with someone? Can I speak up? Can I speak out? Right? Do I have a vision for myself? Am I clear about what it is that I want? And in those moments when I feel challenged or I'm in that shadow side of myself, this is a moment where I can break free, but I have to move through it, right? So this is where you trust, you have faith, you move forward through the challenge and you identify it. So money, sometimes women can spend money in ways to avoid their feelings or to avoid being criticized. When it comes to their money relationship, maybe they might overwork or maybe they might undercharge, right? So that'll identify the shadow sides of the self, maybe secrecy, right? So when they spend money and they hide the receipts, you know, those are the shadow sides of self. So being more conscious about in your money relationship, am I overwhelmed? Am I paying attention to the numbers? Am I managing the numbers? Do I see the ups and the downsides, right? Or am I avoiding it? Am I in denial about my money relationship or my reality? Am I in denial about other relationships? I am a very open and loving and trusting woman. And I had to learn boundaries on where I give my energy and boundaries in relationships where when there's unhealthy patterns from a partner that I see that pattern, but money will also reveal it too. Does that make sense?
Oh, you're talking to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to
Right?
learn boundaries too, right? And it's so interesting how it shows up in your life because I have a lot of mother wounding, and my of course experience of betrayal was from another woman, and it was like a best friend, and it was me overgiving, and I feel like when we're sometimes when we're too trustworthy of a person, we trust people too easily.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to
Absolutely.
change who I am, but there's also a difference between judgment and discernment, and I had to learn discernment. And when you're
Yes.
talking, and this is just so important for people to learn. I love everything that you just shared, and I know that you shared questions from the chakras. Like I'm like, yep, yep, yep. Like where are the blocks? Like because this is what I do with people too. It's like wherever that question lies within that person is where that energy block is within their body, which is also where their shadow and their gift is. The magic is in the thing that you're avoiding. And it's and yet and also you and I talked before this, like I'm not saying this in a negative way at all, but it's like we're never really done. And
Mhm.
also be mindful not to be addicted to the healing. Like there's a balance in that too, right? There are times there's a cycle for everything. So there's a cycle to grow and expand, and then there's a cycle to embody and integrate and to come out and to
Absolutely.
come in, just like nature. And I feel like prosperity, the tree, the spring, like there's a cycle to those things where like there's a season to every life. So as I'm hearing you talk, what I want to move into, and I feel like we could talk all day. I love our conversation. But I want to give you a chance to talk about the sacred money archetypes, because as I was listening, I was thinking, okay, she's probably referring to different archetypes based on the
Yeah.
questions that she's asking. So would you, because I think this is going to be really important for the listeners to help give them a starting place as
Yeah.
to where, because like you and I, like you said, like I know, money is just a reflection of your internal belief system. So either it's your relationship in your marriage or your job or your kids or food or whatever, or you go through the whole thing. I've gone through many of them. And then at some
Mhm.
point 4 years ago, all of a sudden it was time for me to heal my relationship with money. And I know that I was the person who got overwhelmed and avoided. I know that was my pattern. And somehow when I didn't, it was really interesting because when I went, I mean, this feels vulnerable to share, but when I went into this business partnership, which ended up like I had a successful 6-figure business, I had like 75 grand in my account, just like I didn't know what to do with it. And because I didn't know what to do with it, it all just was, it disappeared in a very hard lesson to learn of learning boundaries. And so my point is that I started to realize that there is energy in money. It's just like it's like a child. If you don't nurture it, if it doesn't know where it's going, if you don't have something to do with it, if you're avoiding it, and I know that I avoided it because it created stress in my family, even though there was enough. My dad was in the Air Force, so we lived a very secure life, but I knew that I watched it create stress, so I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I always had this belief that, well, there'll always be enough. I don't really need to pay attention to it. But then when I started to nurture it and appreciate it and be intentional in integrity with it, with my decision making, with my values, when I paid attention to it, just like we do when we parent our kids, just like I do when I'm nourishing my body, why would I be any different with money? But I was until about 4 or 5 years ago. I started to realize that it's just another relationship reflecting my internal belief system. But for whatever reason, I had created this belief that it created
Yeah.
stress and I had to work hard for it, which was a block that I had to let go of. And
Mhm.
so I'd like to know from you, would you be willing to walk us through the archetypes, the gifts, the shadows, the questions? And this will probably take us to the end of our conversation. We might not be
Yeah.
able to go fully into it, but I want to give the listeners enough to be like, oh, that's where, because your book is Heal Your Relationship to Money, Heal Your Life. So
Yeah.
can you give them sort of a starting point through the archetype framework that would allow them to connect with where their inner work might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Heal Your Money, Heal Your Life, it's a healing guide for freedom seekers. And a lot of the times, I was in pursuit of money, and a lot of people are in pursuit of money, right? Without knowing what our enlightened net worth is, not knowing what our value is, not feeling our worth, right? Not being connected to abundance. We're disconnected from it. And archetypes, when they came into my life, I knew I needed to go deeper. It was in the spring of 2020. And I felt a lot of fear in the air. And I intuitively, I knew I needed to go deeper within myself. And I was led to take a training with Kendall Summerhawk, who teaches sacred money archetypes. There's 8 different archetypes. And on my website, janetkendrick.com, you can find the archetype assessment. And it's also listed in my book. So I talk about the archetypes. So the ruler archetype, this is someone who has a desire to achieve success. They're here to be a role model for it. They want to build a community where everyone thrives, right? But a lot of people, when they're still in that survival phase where, maybe they still have some deeper rooted beliefs that they need to heal, going deeper, they're not thriving. So how do they move from that place to thriving? There is the connector archetype who is here to have faith and optimism. Well, there's a lot of people that even in the spiritual world, oh, I have faith and optimism where everything is going to work out. Yet they're disconnected in their own money relationship and they're not paying attention to the numbers. They would rather someone else manage their money versus them managing it, right? And so a lot of women can fall into this category. There's the maverick archetype who is here to illuminate that risk is essential. Well, how often do we get comfortable and we don't want to take that risk, right? Maybe we're held back by the opinions of others, right? And this is where you have to embracing the gifts and the strengths of, I'm okay to stand out in a crowd. I'm okay to be who I am, independent of someone else, and to take a risk, but also balance it as well. So how can I balance taking risks, whether it's a financial risk or a risk in relationship, is by getting to know yourself, by honoring yourself, your values, your worth, right? There is the alchemist. They're here to illuminate a positive change, but they can also have a love-hate relationship with money. So love-hate, right? So what's the hate part? Are you pushing it away, right? Versus, going in and what is it that I hate about it? Is there some beliefs? Is there some thoughts? We could have a lot of shame and guilt around money. And so those are liabilities to our enlightened net worth if we don't move through them, right? If we keep shame and guilt in our body, we don't trust ourselves, right? That's a liability to our enlightened net worth. So if you think about our physical net worth, right, we're building our assets in the external world. Well, think of our body as the same thing. Do we have habits, drinking or smoking or overeating? Are those habits liabilities? We talked about earlier about that part of beating ourselves up. So when we actually go in and when I realized that, because I was really good at beating myself up, when I realized that an archetypes helped me to refine my energy and how I used it, right? So if you're going to eat the cake, eat it and enjoy it, is what I say, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing. Love yourself anyway. Like eventually, the more and more you love yourself, the easier it is to let go of destructive habits or patterns, right? Living in alignment, because you're living more in alignment, it becomes easier to let go of things that are robbing you of your worth, of your value. Let's see, there is the nurturer archetype. So the nurturer archetype, they're caring and compassionate, and it's really important for them to empower themselves. So this is where they could give, but they can feel resentful about their giving because what they're giving is not being reciprocated. And here's the thing, they need to empower themselves first and care for themselves and be compassionate with themselves. So that energy of resentment, it divides us, right? If you resent someone or something or yourself, that energy does divide us. There is the celebrity archetype. They're here to create an impact and a recognition. But if you were a child that did not receive conditional love and approval when you were a child and you are seeking it externally, you're not fully understanding the impact that you might have in the world if you embrace your own vulnerabilities. This is where sometimes people can have a hard time being vulnerable, but yet vulnerability opens the heart. It allows us to trust more. And recognizing yourself, your gifts, your talent, right? Because the celebrity might be an inner big shot, but how are they being of service in their world? Are they, here's a great one, because on social media, people might feel like, they're not getting enough likes or there's not enough comments, and it really impacts them. It makes them feel insecure, like it's not enough or something like that. It's important to recognize that what I'm doing is enough, and I'm not impacted negatively by the amount of likes that I get on my social media, right? This is where I show up today, because this is how I create my future, is in today, anchored in that I am enough, I deserve, I am worthy of healthy relationships. I live my will, the divine's will, because I understand myself and I'm set apart or separate from everybody else. I can independently think for myself, and I have my own vision, my intuition, right? So I'm moving up the chakras again in our body. So understanding that about ourselves. I should have had them right in front of me because
Let's
my
see,
brain
I
was,
wrote down the ruler, the maverick, the alchemist, the nurturer, the celebrity. I know I missed one more, but that's what I have
Mhm.
so far.
Yeah, let's see who is the one that I am missing in there. I'm drawing a
Well,
blank on it.
with
It'll come.
I'm as I'm hearing you speak, it's interesting having done archetype work for in my women's retreats for over 10 years. There's a lot of similarities. I do leadership archetypes, and also I have wealth archetypes as well. I only have four. I just created them, which there's some similarities into what you shared. And I'm guessing from what I heard, and I'm going to take this archetype quiz. We'll definitely put the link in the show notes. I'm probably the ruler or the alchemist.
Yeah.
And so as I'm hearing you speak, I'm thinking, and I don't know if you do human design, but I'm also noticing some similarities, like in my own human design as a manifesting generator, like my what's it called? Define it is role model or martyr. So there's like the shadow and the gift, right? And then I noticed this in the money archetypes.
Yeah.
And as I'm hearing you speak to it, I'm thinking, okay, so who would be the best archetype for me to co-create with? No,
Mhm.
because we are who we are. And so I'm wondering if they're through, and I'm not familiar with Kindle Summerhawk, but I'm going to check it out. I'm wondering if there is also a place for understanding, just like there is in human design or in lots of other types of, I guess, personality tests that you could take, or, enneagrams, that is there space for really understanding. So your relationship in a marriage and or a business collaboration, like who would be a good fit for you and who wouldn't? Does she teach anything like that? I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Oftentimes I will attract people in my life, and when they take the archetype assessment, they're pretty close of a match. So let's talk about consciousness. So in consciousness, we're all one, right? We have all of the qualities, and we become to know more of ourselves when we understand our emotional triggers. What is someone mirroring for me that I need to see about myself? So in a relationship, what do I need to see in that emotional trigger? So when it comes to archetypes, I mentioned that there are 8. So here's all of the qualities of all of the archetypes, and we have them all. But when we do work with them, it's leaning into the top 3. Who's your top 3 archetypes, specifically your top 1? So that way you can understand what your quality is. Like, as the ruler is my number 1 archetype. So understanding my gifts, my natural talents, and also the shadow sides of myself helps me to understand, here's my thought process, my belief process. It helps me to be more in alignment because I know when I'm out of alignment, and accepting the experience as to what it is. I trust it no matter what is happening, it's happening for me. There's a part of us that always wants to come in harmony and into alignment. So we're going to be guided that way, even if we get off course. So when I am more accepting of myself and I move through my fears and I move through my challenges, I grow in love, I grow in joy, I grow in enlightenment. Enlightenment is shining the light on the dark parts of self. So this is where the money archetypes just helps us to know our personality, who we are, much like, what is the tool that you are drawn to? And, here it is in the world. There's so many different healing modalities, and what might be right for me might be different for you. This is where, let go of judgment and that openness. This is where we become more open in our mind and open in our heart. This is the bridge between the heart and the mind, because we are more open. We're discerning, we have boundaries, like we're not that trusting of everyone, because not everyone has good intentions. Not everyone has done the inner work. But what is important is that I've done it and I know who I am. I accept and love all parts of me, right? And every day I get up and I can say, I am amazing, because I'm connected to that. And I live in an amazing life, and I have so many miracles that happen to me in my world. And I love adventure and I love experiencing it. And for me, that creates more joy and abundance within my world. And I love what I get to do. So this is the beauty of archetypes. And I'll just maybe wrap it up with this one, is that our emotions around money can teach us how free we really are. So where are you not speaking up? Where are the opinions of others? Where are you feeling like a martyr, where you need to save someone, right? Where are you keeping secrets? So how we do money is how we do everything. So it will reflect in our personal relationships and in our money relationships. And that's the beautiful thing about archetypes, and how they teach us to go deeper. And of course, teaching it for me, it changed within me. It changed my nervous system. It changed my inner world, which changed in my outer world, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
I've always said, like, and this is, I know for me personally, and just my life path, like what we're here to learn, we're here to teach, because for me that has always been the embodiment of the learning. And it's that for me is part of the freedom, because it's no longer work. It's being the example
Yeah,
of what is possible for others, and it is for some people and it's not for some people, but
absolutely.
it
Be
is.
the light, right? Be the light. When you show up, people are like your energy
Yeah.
is amazing, right?
It is. And also, if you are that person, if you are listening, being really mindful as you, and it sounds like we've had similar experiences, who you give that to.
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
and that has been the hardest lesson, because I think,
Yes,
well, prosperity is there's enough for everyone. Well, yes, there is. And also, you get to discern and choose
that's
who
right.
you share that with. And that was the hardest for me to learn. And it could even be people in your very close, it could be, parents or siblings or best friends or children or spouses. And by the way, it's not personal. Like, it doesn't, this is where we release the attachment.
Mm,
Knowing what is in alignment for you and what isn't doesn't make anybody else wrong. It
mm,
doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make them anybody not enough. It's just part of life's integrated network
that's
of
right.
frequencies and the
Yeah.
way that they work. And I think that was something I had to learn, was letting go of making it personal, letting go of like guilt or it wasn't serving anybody as long as I was in that energy. So not making it personal and being discerning with your energy, because everything really truly is available at whatever is available for each person is different, but everything is available when you truly step into that
Yeah.
frequency. And it actually gets to be fun.
Yeah.
Like I shared with you before our call, I just signed up a new private client, and just as she said yes, like the total investment came right to her right away. Like, she just showed that she was supported. And it's really more about when we open up to trusting, we get to see how supported we are. and
Absolutely.
doing that,
Absolutely.
and just like this co-creation right here, it's just another just pathway that has been bridged together and created because of our experiences in speaking the same language that then goes and allows other people to receive this. So I'm really inviting the listeners to just receive whatever it is that you're ready to receive from this conversation. We are going to share some links in the show notes so that you can find Janet. You can see about her arc. Can we share the archetype quiz as
Yeah,
well? Okay.
absolutely.
We'll share
Absolutely.
a link to the archetype quiz, and so that you can find her if you're someone who is navigating, if you can resonate with her archetypes. I'm so grateful for
Yeah,
your willingness to share this time with me. So thank you.
absolutely.
Is
It's
there
my
anything?
pleasure.
It was my pleasure too. It's why I've had this podcast for 5.5 years, and I keep thinking like, what, like, how much longer am I gonna go? But when I get to have these conversations, it is so enjoyable. It's part of the fuel that keeps me going. And then when I hear from listeners
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, that episode was so amazing, it's like we just need to give create space for more conversations to give people permission to get the support, do the work,
yeah,
know that they can live a life of prosperity
yeah,
and just open up to receiving. So,
yeah, absolutely.
is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with today? I know you shared a lot, but is there anything else coming through?
Yeah. Oh, there's my dog saying hello.
Right?
Hey, hush, hush. Like love yourself and the journey. I share my journey in my book, Heal Your Money, Heal Your Life. And it is a process of coming in alignment with your truth, right? Your truth is living in integrity with who you are. I am enough. I am worthy. I have a healthy tribe that is around me. I'm worthy and I'm deserving, even though a lot of my actions might not be deserving. But when I take more righteous actions, well, then I do open up more, right, to the divine's will. I have self-confidence, I have self-esteem, and I have power. And I take back my power. And you could take back your power, right? We give away our power, we have energy leaks, but when we understand our energy, and we put boundaries on it, where I give and I receive and I can have healthy relationships with money and in life, that opens the heart, which, I can speak up. I can speak my truth. I can share my gifts and talents. I'm not held back. I understand that fears and insecurities is a normal part of my life and I accept it. I embrace it. And in the moment when I feel the fear, I ask for help. We forget to do that. We forget that it's always available to each and every one of us to anchor in, ask for help me to speak the truth, help me to take courageous action, right? Help me to grow more powerfully in myself and trusting my intuition and my wisdom. When I hear it, I trust it, I take action, right? I take action and I just open myself up to receive the abundance of the spirit, the fruits of the spirit, that energy, that essence of love and joy and abundance. And, the fear and the insecurity is all there too, but you no longer have will over me, authority over me. You and the divine have authority over you. And I believe that we're vessels, right, for spirit. So am I living its will or somebody else's? And you can do it. It's not an easy journey, but go easy on yourself. And the easier you are, the more you love and accept yourself and heal those wounds. You could let go of the story. That's where I feel like I gave my story out there into the world, that now I'm in a different place in my life and I get to really co-create. I've let go of a lot of attachments in my life. I'm whole and I'm healthy, and I get to create a life more by design versus default. And I think that's really important. And it's not just for some of us, it's for all of us. I
Hmm.
truly believe that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Janet, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. And I look forward to just sharing this episode with the listeners. And I'd love to have you back on again sometime.
Yeah,
This is our
absolutely.
conversation today. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
everyone, for listening in. And we'll see you again next week. Aloha.